Good evening to all our prospective families who are joining us. Numbers are skyrocketing as we start this webinar tonight. So we're glad you're with us. We are going to give everyone about 2 or 3 minutes just to log in and get settled. We have almost 150 families who are going to join us tonight. So thanks for your patience, and we'll get going in just 1 minute. All right, everyone. It's just about 2 minutes after 7 o'clock, so we are going to get moving a little bit tonight. Thanks to all our prospective families and students who might be joining us. My name is Brad Serton. I'm the Director of Enrollment and Marketing at Fordham Prep, and super excited to be with you tonight to talk about student support. You know, the way I talk about how we interact with our students at Fordham Prep, I like to think of this wonderful triumvirate of student support, which includes classroom teachers, you know, the people that the boys interact with really on a daily basis inside the classroom, mentors, and we could talk a little bit about our mentor program tonight. Boys are placed into small groups under the direction of an adult faculty member called mentors. And then the third prong of that triumvirate is our expansive counseling program, both school and college counseling. So I'm thrilled to be joined tonight by Miss Maureen Martinez, who's the Director of School Counseling and herself a Fordham Prep parent 3 times over, and Mr. Anthony Palumbi, who also works as a school counselor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to start taking you through a little bit of a presentation. And Ms. Martinez is going to talk a little bit, introduce herself and talk a little bit more about her program. So hold on 1 second, and we will get us on our way. That should hopefully be good for everybody. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Maureen Martinez, our Director of School Counseling at Fordham Prep.
Okay. So let me add my welcome to everybody. Such a pleasure to be here to welcome prospective parents and families. Anthony and I are so excited to be able to share a little bit about what we do as school counselors at Fordham Prep. So first, a little bit about me. As you heard, a mom, and 3 of my 4 sons have come through Fordham Prep classes 14, 17, and 18. So I've had the great good fortune to be able to be a Fordham Prep and experience the school through their eyes, and also to be a school counselor at Fordham Prep. And this is my 18th academic year working in the school counseling department. So we'll begin. As you can see on your screen, the slide there tells you a little bit about our team, and we do refer to ourselves as a team. The school counselors are 5 school counselors strong. We're all master level professionals, and we're all credentialed through the American Association for Suicidology. So we're skilled in suicide prevention. In addition, like the teachers, because you'll hear in a minute that our model is a teaching model, a teaching school counseling model. But like the teachers, we're skilled in all the technologies that we use, they use in the classroom, we use those as well. In addition, we have a platform that all academic departments, as well as our department, uses. It's called Schoology. Such a great platform. School counselors started to use it for the first time when we had our challenging learning environment last year due to the pandemic. So we took all the content of our lessons, like the teachers, put them on Schoology. We use it in classroom with the students, and it's also a place for us to post resources for them that they can use in the classroom, but also in between classes. and as needed. We use a team approach, as I mentioned. We work closely together. We meet, I would say, at least 3 to 5 times a cycle, and a cycle is Fordham Prep speak for every 6 days. All the class days at Fordham Prep are lettered. Now I think we'll jump and I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do with the students in our classroom. So first and foremost, I want you to know that, as I said earlier, it's a teaching model. So the heart of the program, you can see the heart icon there up on the screen, is what we call group guidance. This is synonymous with classroom guidance. So guidance is an actual class for all the students that we work with, freshmen through junior years. That first bullet there, those are some of the adjectives we use to describe the program. And again, keep in mind, it's a program, which is very different than a school that just provides services. And you'll understand more in a minute what I mean by that. We're developmental and we're preventative. So the curriculum is comprehensive. It changes every year with the kids as their developmental needs change. And all the years we do a lot of prevention education with the students. So as I mentioned, group guidance is the heart of the program with freshmen. Just to give you an idea of the frequency, this is the grade level that we meet with the most frequent. So you can see that word there, cycle. So this means, of course, once a cycle or once every 6 days, the school counselors are meeting with every one of their freshmen in small groups. The groups are between 7 and 14 students. So it's the same location, same period, same letter day, every 6 days from the beginning to the end of the year. So this is approximately 24 to 26 meetings with them at a minimum in the classroom. In addition to that, as you would imagine, we also meet with our boys one-on-one. So we all have beautiful private offices. We have a brand new counseling suite, which just opened up this fall. If you get a chance to visit the school, don't miss it. It's really gorgeous. It's on the 3rd floor across from the chapel. So we do a lot of one-on-one work with the students. With the freshmen, we're very intentional to meet with them, usually by the end of the 1st quarter, which, by the way, just ended. Of course, we want to welcome them and get to know them. And I should also mention that for school counselors, the boys that we get assigned to in freshman year, we walk them through all the way through senior year. So it's really the beginning of developing what will be a 4-year relationship with the students. So we get to know them well, which of course has benefits for us as well as for the students too. So our next slide.
Actually, Ms. Martinez, before we go on,
yeah, please.
Can you talk, we were going to talk a little bit about group guidance, but can you talk a little bit about individual guidance? What goes on in those one-on-one meetings? What can the boys talk about? What do you want to get across to the boys as you meet with them throughout the year?
Sure. So of course, in the beginning, it's just a getting to know you. So, you know, typically asking questions about where they live, where they went to school, certainly asking them about their transition to Fordham Prep. So how are they getting along? What questions do they have for us? So that's typically the first meeting. I think it's good for parents to know that the role of a school counselor, the primary role is academic in nature. So, you know, our primary goal is to help every student achieve academically and become the best student he can be. So there's a lot of checking in, especially in the beginning. You know, for most students, I tell them this too, it's a tall order. You know, for most kids, Fordham Prep is going to be a more challenging school, and they're going to have to work in all likelihood harder than they've had to work to get the grades that they've enjoyed in the schools where they're coming from. And that can make kids anxious, you know, but we provide a lot of guidance in the classroom and also one-on-one academically, but it goes beyond that. So parents, if you haven't heard the term cura personalis yet, you certainly will if you hear more from Fordham Prep, and certainly if you join our community, but it translates to care of the whole person. So that is certainly something that we support. So although primary role is academic, we of course get into the personal social, into the mental health, and also into college and career. So we can set up meetings with the boys can set up meetings with us, they can walk in, parents can connect to us, they can request that we check in with their boy if that's something they want us to do. So all of that works.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I will. Yep.
Okay, so
Sorry.
no worries. So we often get questions, kind of like, well, what do you talk to them about? That's a, common question that we get from parents and caregivers. So this slide speaks to some of the topics that we cover. So overarching theme, especially in the beginning of freshman year's transition, because like I said, with change comes challenge. So that I call that like an umbrella term for what we do. Underneath that, especially in the beginning of the year. So as I said earlier, we just finished Q1 and most of our lessons were on the 2 themes. So bullets 2 and 3 that you can see on the slide. So a series of classes on what we refer to as connection and community building. In particular, because we're coming from, a year and a half of significant change because of, coming out of the pandemic, we understood that the boys were going to need more opportunities to connect with each other. So we really, last year, as well as this year, retooled the curriculum to do more connection and community building, as well as to do more what we're calling study skill building, because we kind of anticipated that the boys were going to be coming in perhaps with some deficits in terms of academic skills, as well as social emotional development. So we've had a lot of fun, I got to say, in the first quarter, because we've added more interactive activities that put them together in small groups. So it's been a lot of out of your chair kind of game playing, which they really enjoyed. So much so that I think we're going to keep doing this because it was just a lot of fun. And we also retooled last spring. We even worked on it over the summer and into this fall to add more classes on, again, study skills. So we really dug into some of the research on executive function skills. So things like organization, time management, task initiation, task completion, working memory. And we took all this information, we retooled our lessons, we put together a study skills toolkit, and we've been delivering this to kids in the classroom. We really, really liked these lessons. So much so that we're now using some of these strategies, tips, habits, apps, etc., in our one-on-one work with the kids. And we've recently, I think it was last week, we just pushed out to the freshman parents a study skills toolkit for parents, so that parents have some tools that they can use at home with their boys if that's something that they need. And then beyond that, we've had the freshman mentors who do one-on-one work and small group work with the freshmen. They've also asked for this study skills toolkit. So again, we've had a lot of success with that. Some of the other bullets, these are some other themes that we're working on now, and we're going to pull into quarters 3 and 4 in the second half of the year. Health and wellness are big themes. So for example, we do prevention education on suicide, on substance use. We do a couple of classes on stress and stress management. They love those too. And then the culminating event, as we see it at the end of the year, which is in quarter 4, is this kind of all leads to kind of like a values identification. And we do a series of classes, which at the end, the boys actually craft a personal mission statement that they spend a significant amount of time working on, and they present it to the group at the end of the year.
Awesome. Ms. Martinez, I'm going to jump in with a question or two.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop my screen share for a second. Mr. Palumbi, can you talk a little bit more about, so our counseling program and team doesn't just include school and college counselors. We have some other clinicians who work at Fordham Prep. Can you talk a little bit about them?
Yes, that's correct. So in addition to the 5 of us working as school counselors, and a quick hello to everybody, I'm Anthony Palumbi, but we also have a clinical team that's made up of a school psychologist and also a licensed clinical social worker. So just to share a bit about what they do, the 2 of them do work directly with students, sometimes referred to by a parent or by one of us as a school counselor, sometimes by a teacher. In addition, they collaborate often with parents to try and support work that might be happening in the school, and also work that might be happening outside of the school. If a student is in therapy and thinks it's important that that therapist get in touch with our school psychologist to make sure we're bolstering the work that they're doing in session, that's a relationship that's often formed as well. Additionally, if we have a student with a documented learning challenge through either an IEP or a 504, that's sort of another avenue where our school psychologist might sort of connect there and then make sure that she's informing teachers about sort of best practice around best accommodating a student that might have a learning difference or a learning challenge. So they're just a few of the ways that our clinicians work with our students.
Thank
No, I
you.
would add, we also have, our clinical staff also includes a substance abuse professional.
Yes.
Mhm.
Ms. Martinez, can you talk a little bit, having experienced Fordham Prep as a parent,
Yeah.
knowing that Fordham Prep is a community of this year 952 teenage boys, what kind of work do we do in terms of interacting with each other, anything, preventative issues as it relates to bullying, how to treat each other? How do we weave that into what we do at the Prep?
So you're speaking as like school counseling and the work that we do with the boys?
Yeah, in terms of, bullying prevention or things
Oh.
like that.
Yeah, so we've done it, in a number of different ways. So in recent years, we have showed a movie. It was actually called Bully. It was like a movie length film. It was about 90 minutes long, very provocative. And we showed that to them as a full class in the theater. And whenever we do prevention education, we call that kind of large groups. If it involves the whole class, we always then will take that material and then process it in small groups. So what we've done then is then come back to the classroom with the boys and then just kind of unpack the content that was viewed in the theater. And then we make it relevant to their experience at Fordham Prep, just so that they understand, how their behavior, like in terms of behavioral expectations, and that includes, information sometimes that's shared from the dean's office, as well as our newer diversity, equity, and inclusion program and director, which is actually Mr. Palumbi is a part of that, as well as Mr. Pedro.
Great. And to our attendees out there, if you do want to add a question, please use the Q&A function below. We'll definitely put those questions in as we go through. But I do want to jump back to our presentation a little bit. I want Mr. Palumbi to come in, talk a little bit about some of the programs we offer in terms of academic support and some things we do to support freshmen. So I am going to share my screen one more time here. And hit share. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about, whoops, I jumped ahead. There we go.
Okay, so just a bit about the academic support that we offer, especially to our freshman students. So we do have a center that we refer to as the Academic Support Center. So first, just to describe what that is and when it meets. It's an opportunity for students after school hours to have a quiet space to get work done with their peers and also with the assistance of peer tutors, normally upperclassmen, either juniors or seniors, and with faculty members as well, normally 2 or 3 faculty members. So they have an opportunity on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I believe it's 14 sessions in the fall semester and 14 in the spring semester. So both those sessions culminate with midterm exams in the fall and then final exams in the spring. So they really do carry those students through all the way to sort of their most challenging exams that they'll have throughout the year. But it's entirely open door to students on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I know during deficiencies, which is what we call sort of the mid-quarter report that we receive from teachers, that's a great opportunity for us as counselors to let students and parents know about academic support as a resource. So there are students that I'll refer and say, hey, from 3 to 5 o'clock, it might be a really wise way to use your time to visit the Academic Support Center, visit with tutors. Normally there's the upperclassmen that work there have taken many of the classes that the underclassmen are currently enrolled in. So if someone's struggling in Latin 1 or they're struggling in English 1 honors, there's a tutor there that might have gone through that same struggle and can help. So it's a terrific resource. And as I mentioned, available to all of our students, and we'll do some more targeted advertising when we identify students that we think might really benefit from that additional help. So that's our Academic Support Center. Then to speak a little, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Palumbi. So it's fair to say that while it's open to all, there are some students that you do proactively go and speak to about joining the Academic Support Center or going to peer tutoring, things like that.
Yes, and normally they know, I make it clear to them, and I think my colleagues do as well, that I'll stop by maybe around 3:30 or 4 o'clock and pop in to see who's there. But we do have students that we do our best to make sure that they show up and benefit from the resources that they have at their disposal. Definitely.
Great.
And as for peer tutoring, that's a program that we've offered for a long time. Our juniors are normally looking for service hours toward what we call National Honor Society, which is a nationwide program that's acknowledged by many of the colleges our boys will apply to. And in pursuit of those service hours, they need to tutor. I believe it's dozens of hours of tutoring throughout the academic year. So it's an opportunity for our freshmen to receive tutoring free of charge from our upperclassmen. And for our upperclassmen, it's an opportunity to assume a leadership role and pass down some of the wisdom and the intelligence they've learned from their first 3-4 years of classes.
Awesome. So tell us about the freshman counseling care package, Mr. Palumbi, a very popular item in freshman counseling.
I'm happy to hear that. So it's this is really only I believe the second year that we've rolled out this document. This was really born out of COVID. I think we were welcoming our class of 2024. So it was the summer of 2020. And I think all of us were well aware that we would have incoming freshmen that had no idea what to expect from their freshman year experience, which even under the best of circumstances is usually true. They don't know what to expect. Maureen mentioned the social transition, but they didn't know what to expect just from a very practical standpoint of what their school day was going to look like, how much of it would be remote, how much of it would be in person. And this was our way of sort of acknowledging that and meeting them where they were by saying, here's some very tangible tools you can take with you to make you just a little bit less anxious as you embark on sort of this very ambiguous journey through your freshman year. So really what you'll find, and we'll send this out to every family in the summer before freshman year, is just a little bit about us and a little bit of what you've heard tonight, actually, just some of the resources that we use, some self-disclosure about who we are and why we're excited to make relationships with the boys, and also videos from students. I think that's the most valuable component. The boys, I think, listen to us more than most, perhaps, but they listen to their peers more than they listen. So there's quotes from current students and some videos as well. So this one here, this is a junior now, Ryan Irving, who in typical YouTuber fashion, as your sons are probably aware of, is going over all of the things he keeps in his bag on a typical school day. So that's something I think the freshmen really like.
Mr. Palumbi, so all of this obviously is geared towards the freshman students themselves. What kind of support does the counseling department offer for freshman parents, if any?
Oh, a good question. So I mentioned that this resource here was really an idea that we had because we knew that there was this disconnect, this in-person disconnect that was a result of the pandemic. And the same was true for our communication with parents. We have in-person events that we hold for parents, like Freshman Parent Night, for example, where we describe the course selection process. We have new family orientation, which takes place in the fall, where they have a chance to meet faculty, to meet administrators, and a lot of that wasn't happening. So during 2020, we just really increased our email communication with parents. I think we leaned toward the side of over communicating. We wanted them to know what we were doing with their boys in class. We wanted them to know what we were doing in our meetings individually. And I think we just realized that there was really no downside in doing that. If you have one too many emails in your inbox from us, then just when you have a free moment in your week, then it's worth taking a look. So Maureen mentioned a toolkit that we're pushing out to parents that'll have different resources, executive functioning resources, ways to help your son manage his time, ways to help him keep an organized study space, and different sort of interventions that you might be able to employ with him. But we'll frequently send out messages just to say, hey, it's the middle of the first quarter now, might be a good time to reach out to us. Or we'll email to say, here's what we did in group guidance this week, and if you want to mention it at the dinner table, here's how. So like I mentioned, just frequent early email communication about what we're doing and why we think it's important and relevant, not only to the boys, but to families.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually, as Mr. Palumbi said, this document is really geared to helping freshmen in all aspects of their year. I'm actually going to stop my share here. And we do have some questions that have come in from our participants. As we get into those, Ms. Martinez, can you talk a little bit, while we're not talking about college guidance per se tonight, can you talk a little bit about how college guidance is worked into the curriculum and
Oh, yeah.
a little bit about that sort of part of the program as it gets to junior year?
Sure. So a few years ago, we changed the model. So what exists? So first of all, we're called the counseling department. Underneath that are the two primary branches of school and college. So how that works is, as I mentioned earlier, as a freshman, all the boys are assigned a school counselor. And again, we walk them through to their senior year. What happens in junior year is in the second half. So basically the second semester of junior year, the boys will transition from our guidance classes. So we have them in class, school counselors in semester one. But in semester two, they transition to their college counselors. So they stay in the same rooms, but now the college counselor is walking into the classroom and the frequency increases. So the frequency goes from, this is junior year, from every other cycle with us, they start to meet with the college counselor. Now it becomes every cycle. So now juniors are going to meet with their college counselor in the classroom once every 6 days for the entire second semester, as well as the first semester of their senior year. So that's going to give them a full year of every cycle college counseling. Again, S2 junior year, and then S1 senior year. So they'll have both. So junior year and senior year, they have both a school counselor as well as a college counselor. And then college counseling starts to outreach and meet in earnest with families, again, semester two of 11th grade. And then they're going to work with those families for a solid year.
Great.
Yep.
So to any of our attendees, if you do have questions, please make sure to use the Q&A function. We'll type them out, or we'll certainly answer them live. Another question, I'll throw it out to both Ms. Martinez and Mr. Palumbi. Just based on your work with different types of students, if a student was under distress at some point in during their school day, who would you recommend? Who are the people that they can turn to if something's going on and they need immediate assistance?
Mm-hmm. Usually it's us, or someone on the clinical team. So that includes the school psychologist as well as the school social worker. So as a community, the whole community knows that that's what we do. So even if a teacher, which is often where the distress will be seen, will be like in a hallway or in a classroom, so whether it's a faculty person or a dean or an administrator, if a kid seems in distress, first of all, the faculty person would approach and ask the student how you're doing. And if any kind of distress was noted, even if it's in the middle of the class, I've had faculty walk a student down, or I've had a student walk a student down because the faculty person said, you know what, why don't you take whatever his name is down to see Mrs. Martinez or Mr. Palumbi. So the community, it's kind of like a wraparound care almost. I think we all recognize that, life is challenging and life can get in the way of academics. And if a kid needs help, there is help. And now I love that we're all together. So, we used to be spread out from the first floor all the way up to the third. Now the counseling center houses all of us, all school counselors, the clinicians, as well as the college counselors.
And Ms. Martinez is right. For those of you who have been in the building, whether you've toured with us, students have come for RAM for a day, or you've been to our open house, we had a lot of wonderful construction open this fall, and the counseling center was a huge part of that. And Ms. Martinez is right. Our counseling staff used to have their own offices, private offices for individual conversations, but really pinged around the building in different areas. So now they're all in this beautiful and the best smelling center we have in the building. There's all these wonderful candles and things. Go visit the counseling center. They also
we are counselors after all. We're into that.
The best coffee at Fordham Prep is in the counseling center. But if you do walk in and you're in distress and you're looking for somebody, you're looking for your counselor, and he or she is not there, there's inevitably going to be somebody else. So that was really part of the impetus of building the facility, was that there was almost guaranteed to have somebody there to help a student who needs it. And it's a really wonderful, a wonderful space. Ms. Martinez, can you talk a little bit to this? Mr. Palumbi mentioned it earlier, as we work with students who might have a 504 or might have an
Yeah.
IEP, in terms of student support. How does Fordham Prep support students like that?
Sure. So first and foremost, to let us know. So if there's any kind of challenge that a student has, freshmen are new to us. So, we strongly encourage parents to reach out to us. In terms of if there is any documentation, to certainly share that with us. Brad, I believe through the admissions process, sometimes parents do it through admissions, sometimes they share it directly with Mr. Broussard, who's our assistant principal. And then of course that information would get to us. It helps us just to understand what kind of learner your student is and how to best support them. In terms of accommodations, we provide things like extended time on the midterm and final exams, preferential seating, if that's something that a student would benefit from. In addition, we have a wonderful administrative assistant that serves the counseling department. Her name is Carol Isabel, and Carol does an incredible job at helping families to acquire extended time on standardized testing, which is so important, the testing for college admission, like the ACT or the SAT. And in addition, of course, we would be really quick to connect students who are kind of revealing themselves to have academic challenges to some of our other services, some of which have been mentoring. So we have a peer tutoring program, we have the Academic Support Center, and we have also developed an even better kind of list of local folks, local professionals that can provide outside support. So if that's something that's needed, we kind of track that, and we are quick to work with parents to connect a student to outside resources if that's something that he needs, in addition to what we can provide.
And just to hop in there and add one more thing, so many of the resources we've alluded to tonight, things like the study skills toolkit, for example, that are fairly new, things that we're rolling out, were really made with those students in mind, because we have seen an increase in the number of boys that enter our community that might have documented learning challenges. So things like, do you do an accurate job assessing how long a task is going to take you? If not, here's a log that you can use so you can actually track yourself and see, am I assuming that things will take me an hour when in fact they only take me 25 minutes? And if so, what does that mean for me as I plan my assignments for the night ahead or the week ahead? So it's definitely something we continue to read about and try to make sure that our interventions are informed by best practice.
Thanks, Mr. Palumbi. I will say, from an admission standpoint, Ms. Martinez is right. Those of you who might have a current 504 or IEP, they're not required in the admissions process, so you don't have to submit them at all. Ms. Martinez is right. When you come to registration, if you do end up matriculating to Fordham Prep, it's something that certainly we'll want to know about. But if you do want us to look at them before the admissions process plays out, that's always something that we can do and have done for families before. So feel free to reach out to me directly in the admissions office. What we would do is take that information. Our assistant principal, Mr. Broussard, would read it. Ms. Martinez would meet it, and we would assess it and have a conversation with you about how that information would help students at Fordham Prep, or what it would mean for students at Fordham Prep. So we can have a very open conversation about it. So again, it's not a requirement in any way, shape, or form, but it's sometimes, if you do want to have a little bit more of an open dialogue about that during the admissions process, we're more than happy to do it and have done it many, many times in the past. Mr. Palumbi, can you talk a little bit about, you work very closely with our DEI initiatives. Can you talk a little bit about how the counseling department supports that work that we do?
Of course. So yes, this is my first year joining Mr. Randy Pedro. I serve as our Assistant Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, along with another counselor of ours, a college counselor, Ms. Erica Keogh, is also an Assistant Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. So for one, we have 2 people represented in our department that do this work and make sure that, again, it's at the core, the backbone of the work that we do in our roles in our school as counselors. So there's lots of different ways. I mean, the first one that comes to mind, we mentioned that we do a lot of connection and community building at the start of the year. So much of that is with diversity, equity, and inclusion in mind. And I would say especially that inclusion piece. It's the beginning of freshman year could be a difficult time of social transition for so many students. And I think by naming that and highlighting it for freshmen and communicating it to them that you are far from the first freshman in high school to struggle with meeting new people, with putting yourself out there, and here are some ways that we can help. That really is a matter of inclusion and one that's close to us. Another, and this I think was mentioned in another question from a parent just about incidents of bullying. We've begun to read more and more about restorative justice and tried to find ways to incorporate that into our model, not just in the counseling department, but in the dean's office as well. So if there is an incident in our school and one that calls to question someone's sort of identity in our school and their sense of inclusion in our school, then rather than dealing with that in sort of a punitive way that might have been more traditional years ago, we're trying to find ways to bring that student in, bring someone that did harm into that meeting, and bring adults to model sort of civil discourse and to model restorative justice for them so that they know, okay, I understand what I did wrong. I understand how I hurt not just an individual, but the community that I'm in. And I also understand how to make it right and how to correct my steps moving forward. So it's evolving always, but I like to think we do a better job now than we did in the past.
Thanks, Mr. Palumbi.
Sure.
So if you do have any more questions, please use the Q&A function. I'm going to throw this one out to both my colleagues here, something a little more lighthearted. What is your favorite part about the Fordham Prep community?
My gut reaction is the sense of humor. So I can still recall my first year, which was back in 2004. I just kept thinking, oh my God, everybody is so funny. I don't know, it's like there's this collective community humor, which has made it from the beginning enjoyable and still does. But I love seeing how our teachers interact with the kids in the classroom. It is very, very common to hear this positive energy and kids laughing, even when they're in school. And then that, was my experience. And then of course, as I mentioned, I had 3 boys come through Fordham Prep, and, my kids came from public school. So my kids had a significant transition, all of them coming into the Catholic environment for many reasons. Thank God they all stayed, but the school won them over after like the first marking period. So I was pleased with that. But one of them, the first one who came through, I remember it must have been after the first week, maybe the second week. And kind of like with a look of almost like, he was just incredulous. And his quote was, "Mom, I laugh every day." Like he just couldn't believe that he was at school and he wasn't the best student, especially when he was a freshman, I got to tell you, but he loved it. So again, their experience matched mine. And I think it has everything to do with, the hallmark of a Jesuit education, I think, is how relational we are. And you can really see it. And I know the kids can feel it, because this is why kids visit our school after one day. And so many of them have told me that I knew at the end of the day that this is the school that I wanted to go to, because that's the thing they can feel. It's the connection, frankly, between the students and the adults and between the students themselves.
Yeah, it's hard for me not to steal that answer.
Yeah.
I would say the thing I love most about working with the faculty is it's infectious to be surrounded by so many people that are eager to do so many different things. It's rare to meet someone in our building that only wears one hat. And that's because people want to hang around. They want to make the community better. They like where they work. And it's easy to stay at a place like that. And as far as work with students, I would say it's this sense of connection or a relationship building. I know Maureen mentioned that we get to work with our students for 4 years, but even still, it's I have the chance to coach. I coach JV soccer. I get to meet students that way. We have the opportunity to lead students on retreats, on service trips, and by the time they graduate, I find that not only do I know their faces and I know their names, but we have true relationships with the boys in our building, and I like to think that's uniquely Fordham Prep. So those are my 2 favorite things.
Awesome. So looks like questions are winding down. So I'm going to ask both of you one more question and see if there's any more questions from our attendees. Obviously, you both work with students as they go through this wonderful transition to Fordham Prep during stressful times at Fordham Prep. The admissions process, as the boys who might be out there are going through now, is also one of those times of transition and stress. What is your best piece of advice for our current 8th graders who are into this process?
I have one right off the bat. I would
Good,
say
go.
ask lots of questions. Better to ask questions now than to find out later and wish you had asked questions. So that's a big one. And of course, there's always a bit of trust your gut. And if your son hasn't already had the chance, I think Ram for a Day is a great way to find out what your gut is telling you. If you spend a day in our building and you leave, there's a good chance you're going to know whether or not it's for you.
Thanks for the plug, Mr. Palumbi.
No problem.
And I would say do everything that you can and then let it go. You know, the outcome is going to be what the outcome's going to be. And I like what Anthony said about kind of, you know, using your head, but also not forgetting about your heart, because I think plugging into your intuition and where you feel that intuitive pull is important in decision making. St. Ignatius would agree, you know.
Awesome. That's a good answer too.
Yeah.
So with that, I think we're going to wrap up our session tonight. I want to thank Ms. Martinez and Mr.
Sure.
Palumbi, my wonderful colleagues, for being with us tonight. We will make this recording available at some point later this week for our prospective families who might want to watch it again or weren't with us tonight. If you do have any questions about anything you heard tonight, feel free to reach out to the admissions office. We'll do our best to answer it, certainly with not as much experience as Ms. Martinez, Mr. Palumbi, and then we can always connect you with them if you have something specific that you would like to follow up on. But again, thanks to Ms. Martinez. Thank you to Mr. Palumbi. Thank you to all of you for being with us tonight. So very appreciated. And we hope to see you at Rose Hill sometime soon. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good luck.
Good night, all.